paying down debt is not paying down a four-wheeler or going out and buying a new flat screen TV. It is shoring up your family's finances after 4 difficult years. And that's exactly what I trust Americans will do. And I trust them to be better stewards of that 20% than Washington.
Welcome back to the Dr. Phil podcast. We are diving into the world of finance, innovation, and DOGE with James Fishback. As the founder and CEO of Azoria Partners, an American investment firm, Fishback has made waves in the industry, to say the least. He's also the founder and president of Incubate, a nonprofit empowering young Americans with the art of debate. I can't tell you how excited I am to talk about that, because we have so many people living in a bubble right now, echo chambers, not listening, not debating, not sharing ideas. So I'm anxious to talk about that. Guided by principles of free speech, open discourse, and merit, Incubate has become the fastest growing debate league in the nation, offering an alternative to the ideological echo chambers of traditional high school debate. James is also the visionary behind the DOGE Dividend proposal, a bold idea aimed at reshaping how government savings benefit taxpayers. And I got a million questions about that. He stated on X, American taxpayers deserve a DOGE dividend. 20% of the money that DOGE saves should be sent back to hardworking Americans as a tax refund check. He says it was their money in the first place, and he has a lot more to say on that. So, James, thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure, Dr. Phil. Thank you for having me.
Well, you've been pretty busy. You got a lot going on. How old are you?
I just turned 30.
I got T-shirts 30 years old. My God, you've been really, really busy. So, where do you live?
I live in North Florida, a small town called Madison, about an hour from the state capital.
All right. A lot of people are going to Florida right now, which I love it down there. I go to Mar-a-Lago a lot. I've always been a fan of Florida. So how did you get involved in DOGE?
It started 2 years ago when DOGE wasn't even a word that we would come across. I was introduced by a mutual friend to Vivek Ramaswamy, who you know ran for president in the 24 election, the Republican primary. And we hit it off, and I traveled with him and was an advisor to him while I was working at my investment firm. And then, of course, President Trump had this historic victory and announced the creation of DOGE, which Vivek and Elon were co-chairing. And I got involved advising there. And of course, as you know, Dr. Phil, Vivek stepped aside to run for governor. He'll be a great governor of Ohio. And then I just started working more and more as an external advisor on this work. And this idea of a DOGE dividend really sparked, I can't make this up, it sparked in a dream. I woke up, I called our head of research at Azoria, who is 24 years old, and I said, let's go to Capitol Grill, let's flesh this out. In 2.5 hours, we had a 4-page PDF. We put it online, and I suppose the rest is history. The president has supported it, Elon as well, the cabinet. I was just on the Hill this morning meeting with members to win over their support, to put the evidence, the facts in front of them on why Americans deserve a refund of their hard-earned tax money.
All right. Well, if I understand this right, and I've been really interested in it, I'm a big fan of DOGE. I think it's a very ambitious project. I don't know if it'll work or not, but I do know this. Everybody talks about cutting back government, cutting back spending, getting rid of fraud and waste and all this bloat and everything. But to my way of thinking, this is the first time that anybody has really gone after this with intentionality. I mean, really just said, everybody talks about it. This is the first time anybody has, in my view, said, I'm going to wake up every morning and this is going to be my purpose for getting up, and really focused on it. How much have they been able to cut so far? How many days have they been at it? How much have they been able to cut so far?
It's a great question. So we're 50 days in, and they've already cut over $100 billion, saved the taxpayer $100 billion. Now, it's easy for us to get lost with a big number like that, but what does that mean in terms of dollars and cents per taxpayer? The amount that DOGE has saved in 50 days per taxpayer, Dr. Phil, is $670. To your listeners, to your viewers, to your massive audience, ask yourself, what would you do with $670 right now? And the cool thing is, we are in the early innings of this major government reform. You bring up a good point. DOGE is not the first government arm to want to go after waste, fraud, and abuse, just like Uber wasn't the first company to want to put you in a car and take you to point A to point B, just like Apple wasn't the first touchscreen phone.
Right.
What matters, of course, is not the idea. Ideas are a dime a dozen. What matters is the execution. And President Trump and Elon, they are executing. They are rolling up their sleeves. They are not letting all of the gimmicks get in the way. They're going into the system. They're finding out the waste, fraud, and abuse, making it very public and transparent, and saying, look, enough's enough. Let's save the taxpayer money. And I believe the DOGE dividend proposal takes this DOGE project full circle. You identify, you save, and then you refund. When someone has wronged you, you are due restitution. And the truth is, the government has wronged the hardworking taxpayer. The taxpayer now deserves restitution.
And of course, this has been going on a long time, even under Reagan. I mean, Reagan tried to stop this, and government just kept getting bigger and just kept spending more. Democrats, of course, big government is kind of synonymous. Some of these things that we've been through, I've seen the list. Some of them are just, you couldn't make them up. If you were writing these for a comedy bit, people would say, nobody's going to believe that. It's over the top. I'm expecting them to come up with $100 billion to teach goats to dance in the rainforest next. It's that level of absurdity. But there are also cuts being made that have probably been mistakes, and they're having to restore some of that. And I think they should. I think when they make a mistake, they should say, hey, that got swept up and shouldn't have been made, so we're going to restore that. And I've loved the fact that they've been honest about that. And if they've cut something that needed to stay because it affected the elderly or it cut jobs that we really need, they've said, hey, that was a mistake. We're unraveling that, putting that back where it needs to be. And that, to me, was a big convincer that they're serious about this. They make a mistake, they say so, but they keep moving on. They don't listen to the critics and, oh, caught you making a mistake. And so they back off. They say, no, we'll just undo that and keep moving on. That's what I love about it.
That's exactly right. You don't judge someone by a mistake they made. You judge them on how they react when they made that mistake. And so I'm in DC right now as we speak, and most people, when they make a mistake here, they explain it away, they minimize it, or they try to blame someone else. Elon said in the Oval Office, quote, that was a mistake with one respect to an Ebola program in Africa, and they quickly restored it. And so we should never hold anyone to the perfection standard. The standard you should be held to in government is if you make a mistake, own up to it, and then do the right thing. But the very fact, Dr. Phil, that we're even having this conversation where we know what mistakes they're making, where they're expressing contrition for a mistake and then putting in place the correction, that tells you that this is an organization that is credible, is honest, and transparent. And that's what Americans deserve.
Is it transparent enough?
I think so. DOGE.gov. Anybody can go on there right now, look exactly where the savings are coming from by agency, what programs were cut. There's been reporting in the New York Times where the numbers were overstated or reduplicated, and those were quickly addressed. And so the fact that we even know there are errors is because they were addressed in the first place. And that's someone you trust. Again, you don't judge someone for making a mistake. You judge them for how they respond when they've been confronted with that mistake. And Elon has time and again showed when you make a mistake, own up to it and keep moving forward.
Having trouble taking your business to the next level? Financial Yield Solutions, Inc., or FYSI for short, provides tailored solutions for businesses generating $1 to $10 million annually. For tax planning, advertising, and retirement strategies to scaling operations, FYSI helps businesses thrive. With $500 billion raised for AI tech under the Trump administration, businesses cannot afford to be left behind. FYSI can even help you explore AI integration to cut costs and boost profits. With over 14 years of experience, FYSI specializes in solving the exact challenges business owners face. Business owners can book a free business review today to transform their operations, boost profits, and secure their financial future. Visit fysi.com/Dr. Phil or call 800-877-4000. That's fysi.com/Dr. Phil or call 800-877-4000. A healthy life starts with a healthy night's sleep, and Zecliner was designed specifically to promote restful sleep. Studies show 7% of U.S. adults either choose not to or are unable to sleep in a traditional bed. Zecliner offers a superior alternative. The Zecliner is a revolutionary recliner designed by FlexSteel to be both your ultimate relaxation station and making it an ideal bed alternative. The Zecliner is the perfect sleep solution, meticulously engineered with 4 distinct models. Model 1, Model 2, Petite, Model 2, and Model 2 Plus. No matter your size or specific need, there is a Zecliner that's right for you. Zecliner is more than a chair. It's a complete sleep solution. Whether for daily relaxation or as an alternative to a bed, it delivers unmatched comfort, technology, and support. Visit Zecliner.com today to find the perfect model for you. You deserve the Zecliner. One of the things that I've really liked about this is the transparency, because to me, if you have the transparency that I've seen, that's putting control back in the citizens' hands. Because if you don't have information, then you don't have any power. And by putting this on such a transparent basis where people can go to doge.gov, look up what's there, see who's being impacted, get the information, and then that leads to other places they can go to get more information, that's putting accountability on the people that are running it and giving the information to the taxpayer, to the voters. That's putting power back to the people. And that's what this is all about. That's what I love about this. It's giving the power back to the people. And I don't know if people have really thought about it that way. But the president, people are saying, oh, we got Elon Musk up there doing all this stuff. And he's not an elected official. He's not even really kind of a bureaucrat. He's sort of a hybrid something. He's totally accountable to the president of the United States. He can stop that in 2 seconds. He can say, stop, you're fired. You're out of here. We're not doing this anymore. He is completely accountable to the President of the United States, who's accountable to the people through the Constitution. So it seems to me there's complete accountability, and we've added transparency, which seems like a good thing to me.
That's exactly right. The fact that there was no website called doge.gov or anything like it where you could actually see how your government dollars, how your tax dollars were being spent, that had never existed before with this level of detail and recency. And that is a testament to the transparency. And again, the president, to your point, is free to hire and fire whomever he'd like. Those powers are vested in him in our Constitution. And so keep doing what you're doing, Elon. I spoke with him last week, and he's a big fan of this proposal of the DOGE dividend, but because I think it really does call attention and wins the hearts and minds of folks to say, get on board with the fiscal responsibility movement. And also, as the president said last week on Air Force One, what the DOGE dividend does, Dr. Phil, is it incentivizes the taxpayer to report wasteful government spending. Why? Very simply, the more the government saves, the bigger that DOGE check ends up being. And so win, win, win across the board.
All right. Now, what's the formula? You're saying 20% of however much is cut would go back to the taxpayer.
Correct.
So they have to be someone that paid taxes in the year 2025.
They would have had to do one of 3 things. They would have had to pay federal income tax in the most recent year, or they would be currently receiving Social Security benefits, or they are a veteran who served the country and is now receiving veterans benefits. So if the taxpayer or the American were to fall into either of those 3 categories, and many will fall into all 3, or at least 2, that they would receive an equal portion of the DOGE savings, 20% of it.
Okay, so they've got to be Social Security benefits, veterans, or taxpayers.
Correct, or taxpayers, correct.
Okay, and if they fall into any one or all 3, then they would be entitled to a portion of 20% of whatever is saved by Doge. So your calculation is if they hit the 2 trillion and that goes to 79 million households, that would be roughly $5,000 per household.
That's the rough calculation. And it's not predestined. If it ends up being more than 2 trillion, it'll be more than 5,000. And if it ends up being 1 trillion, the check will be for 2,500. We need Americans of all walks of life to chip into Doge. And the way they do that is by reporting wasteful government spending that they're seeing. The more that Doge saves, the bigger that check is. So there's nothing preordained or predestined about 5,000. That is based on the prediction of 2 trillion in total, not in a given year, but in the total run of Doge, 2 trillion. I think we can actually get there, Dr. Phil, but it's going to depend on Doge and Elon and the president, and also everyday taxpayers stepping up and saying, if I see waste, fraud, or abuse, I got to report it. Doge cuts it, and then we get a cut of that action.
And so they're running at about $2 billion a day right now.
That's right. Anywhere between 2 to 4 billion. Again, we're over 100 billion 50 days in. So we're hitting some good numbers. But again, we haven't hit the Pentagon yet, where so much of it is. And as Elon said earlier this week, there is waste and fraud in Social Security. There is waste and fraud in Medicare and Medicaid as well. If you aren't entitled to those payments, if you are an illegal alien in this country or you're receiving federal benefits that you are not deserving of, that is fraud. We have to cut you out. We don't have to cut you out because we want to do it. It's because we have to do it. We have to protect those programs and the longtime recipients of them, and we have to protect the taxpayer.
Okay, now tell me if I'm missing something here, because you're much more embedded in this and closer to it than I will ever be. I'm reading online people freaking out that Doge is looking at and making cuts regarding Social Security. That's the headline. That's the panic headline, Doge cutting Social Security. But if you go past the headline where everybody's going, oh my God, now they're cutting Social Security. My take on that is what they're doing is cutting waste, fraud, and abuse from Social Security, which in fact gives greater life to Social Security, which gives greater security to Social Security recipients, where
Correct.
it looks to be headed for insolvency. This lengthens the time that you can project Social Security to be alive without having to do some kind of overhaul of it. But, I mean, the headlines are saying they're doing cuts in Social Security when, in fact, they're streamlining Social Security, getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, so the money that's in Social Security goes further, protects more recipients, and gives it a longer life. Am I missing something here?
You are spot on. Imagine if we had a food pantry, Dr. Phil, in a rural part of my home state of Florida, and every day 100 people lined up to get food, and some people at the end of the line weren't going to get any, even though they were deserving it. But it turns out 10% of the people in the line were committing fraud. They were lying about their income status to have access to the food pantry. The right thing to do for all of the people who are deserving, who are hungry, who need that food and drink, would be to kick out the people who are cheating the system and defrauding the food pantry. It's no different with Social Security. If you want to protect those on Social Security, to protect the solvency of that program, that our hard workers who paid into it for decades can take the money out after they retire, you've got to kick the people off who are committing fraud. That's everything that Doge is doing. That's all that Doge is doing. And the president has made it clear. No one who has a legitimate claim to Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid will be removed. But if you are lying, if you're an illegal, if you're committing fraud, you're out, and Doge will see to it.
I've seen some of the headlines. We just looked at one that said they're talking about cutting 50% of the workforce. Is Social Security workforce bloated? Are there people there that aren't necessary, aren't contributing to administering Social Security benefits?
Absolutely. And at a time now where you have AI call centers, so instead of waiting on the phone for 90 minutes to talk to a Social Security representative about your benefits, your money that you paid into the system over decades, you can now have someone at an AI call center or someone more senior pick up that call and you can get the resolution right away. There has to be reorganization. Clearly, Social Security is not efficient with its current workload because there have been so many stragglers who have been hiding under their Zoom cubicles, their virtual cubicles for years now, not pulling their weight, not doing their work, and holding back what would otherwise be an efficient system. It's not personal. There is no constitutional right to a federal job. If you're not contributing, you're taking away and it's time to go.
Yeah, if that can be streamlined and you can cut overhead, then it seems to me that when you cut overhead and you operate more efficiently, then you're just streamlining and benefits go further. It's a more efficient organization. So I've looked at a number of charities that I had considered donating to over the last 30 or 40 years. And some of them have 10% overhead. Some of them have 80% overhead. And if you give $1 and 80 cents of the dollar goes to administration and overhead, and maybe 20 cents out of every dollar gets to a recipient, that's not a great place to put money. Let's be honest. We're not getting any younger. And if you want to look and feel your best, check out Pure Health Research. With 45 premium health supplements targeting every health goal, boosting energy, trimming belly fat, supporting blood sugar, increasing testosterone, or reducing leg swelling, Pure Health has you covered. Each formula features natural, non-GMO ingredients backed by clinical research and manufactured in the USA. Here's the best part. Pure Health Research is offering you an exclusive 35% discount. Just go to purehealthresearch.com and use coupon code PHIL at checkout. With their 365-day money-back guarantee, there's zero risk in trying something new. So why wait? Head over to purehealthresearch.com now. Explore their 45 amazing supplements and save 35% before this deal ends with coupon code PHIL. Don't miss this chance to feel your best. $36 trillion. That is the U.S. debt, and it gets deeper and deeper by the day. Our debt has never been higher, nor have the stakes. The government is looking to slash the federal budget by $2 trillion, and no one knows what that will mean for your job, savings, and future. I've seen a lot in my time, and there's one thing I know for sure. You need to prepare before it's too late. I trust Preserve Gold to help protect my wealth, and I strongly urge you to do the same. They are the only precious metals firm I trust and recommend to my family, friends, and audience, and they have a special offer just for you. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 to get your free precious metals guide from Preserve Gold. With gold prices recently breaking records and analysts predicting this trend to continue throughout 2025, you cannot afford to wait. As a bonus, you can get up to $15,000 with a qualified purchase from Preserve Gold. So don't wait. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 today. If we can streamline some of these federal programs where it's not all being absorbed with bureaucracy and more of the money is getting to the people that need it, that are entitled to it. I've seen so many of these entitlement programs not going to people that are entitled to the benefits, but are going to people who get either the money or the cards or the goods, and they turn around and sell them. Right. Those people aren't entitled to those benefits. They're taking them and selling them or returning them to stores or doing whatever. The creativity of people ripping off the government is astounding. If those people would use that creativity working, they would do great.
That's exactly right. They could put those talents to much better use. And to your point is, if you're taking government benefits, whether it's SNAP or whatever, a food stamp card, for example, and you're using that and trying to collect 70, 80 cents on the dollar to sell it off to buy drugs or to buy a new TV, you are defrauding a government program, which means you're defrauding the taxpayer. That is fraud. it has to go. And so that's what DOGE is going to do. And to your point earlier on Social Security, there are 60,000 Social Security workers working at the administration. Why? You're sending out checks to people, oftentimes very simply, if it's direct deposit in many cases. So why do you need all that overhead? Why not save that money to ensure that these benefits are secure for decades to come?
I think that they're using this fear mongering, these fear tactics to get people, oh my God, they're going in and cutting Social Security. No, what they're doing is streamlining the program so it lasts longer. So you have recipients that are more secure for a longer period of time. I hate that they're fear mongering because that's not compassionate. They're not protecting anybody by doing that. And it just seems to me they're masquerading as protecting Social Security recipients when in fact they're keeping them in danger. They're keeping them in jeopardy of those benefits drying up sooner, where they could be securing them more by having an efficient, lean, mean operation that stretches those benefits out. And I just really hope people will look past the headline, past the initial anxiety, and find out, wait a minute, they're going in and cleaning this up. So those of us that are truly entitled to the benefits are more secure in getting them going forward. And I really hope people pay attention to that and don't just buy off on the clickbait headline, which people are using to scare people away from this. Now, let me ask you this. The original idea that I understood from DOGE was, look, we've got a $37 trillion deficit, and we're going $2 trillion a year into debt with overspending. And the idea that I understood in the beginning with DOGE is that, all right, we're going to go in and cut this, so we stop that. Was that the original plan?
Yeah, I think the original plan was to get to a better place of fiscal responsibility. This debt is completely out of control. Under Biden, it went from 30 trillion to 36 trillion. Lord knows how it was actually spent. I mean, think about it. We're spending as a government 50% more per year than we were not 20 years ago, not 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Our budget has gone up by 50%. Ask the average American if their government is doing a 50% better job. The answer is no. You don't go to a steakhouse, pay 50% more, and have an inferior quality steak. And that's exactly what we've been dealt. So that's unacceptable. I think DOGE's job was twofold, was to pull back on excessive government spending, but also to streamline the system, because taxpayers and Social Security recipients and businesses and workers deserve a government that is simple, straightforward, and efficient. And so those two go hand in glove. But yes, debt sustainability and government efficiency, I see those as the two priorities of DOGE.
All right, if they're spending $2 trillion more a year than they're bringing in,
yeah,
and they cut $2 trillion, then that means they would operate for a year at a net zero. They would not go into debt. They would actually cover their bills for the year. So why give away $400 billion to people, which means now you are back in debt? You're giving away $400 billion you don't have to give away.
So it's an interesting way to frame it. And I think it's a fair question. The way I would say it, Dr. Phil, is this. We're not giving it away. We are giving it back. This was the taxpayer money a year ago or 2 years ago. The average taxpayer will give Washington $270,000 of income tax over their lifetime. And we're talking about sending back just 2% of that. The reason why is you save the money, you give it back for really two main reasons. You have to restore trust in government. Let's stop taking the taxpayer for granted. For 50 years, people send money to Washington year after year. There's nothing to show for it here in America, but all these boondoggles in foreign countries. If it means taking a slight percentage of that and sending it back so we can increase the trust, confidence, and accountability between the taxpayer and our government, that's worthwhile. The second thing is, when you go to Walmart and you buy something and you weren't satisfied and they owe you a refund, their excuse cannot be, Dr. Phil, well, Walmart has $5 billion of debt on our balance sheet. We can't give you a refund until we've paid off the debt. They're two separate transactions. Do you want to give Americans their hard-earned money back as a one-time rebate? Essentially, by the way, for every $5 we save, we're just giving back $1. Do you want to give that $1 of savings to the taxpayer, or do you want to send it to China, who holds our debt? That's the choice you really have to make. We're saying 80% of it goes down to narrowing the deficit and paying the debt. And the other 20, the very small minority of it, goes as a restitution payment to the taxpayer. I think we'll end up saving more by having the taxpayer on board by contributing and reporting waste, fraud, and abuse, which means this very thing may pay for itself. Think of it this way. If we were to save $2 trillion no matter what, but we were to save $2.4 trillion because the taxpayer was involved precisely because they were expecting a DOGE dividend check, then it would pay for itself right off the bat. And so I would compare those two worlds and say very simply, we're not giving them money, we're giving them back their money that they had just sent to Washington.
Do you think it will actually incentivize them? It will deputize them to open their eyes and find waste, fraud, and abuse that you couldn't find if you didn't have millions of eyes looking for it, reporting it, calling it in, letting people know what's going on? Do you think deputizing them will actually make the DOGE system more effective?
I do. And there's a really simple reason behind it. We interact with our federal government every single day. I did growing up. After hurricanes in Florida, FEMA would come around and waste government money on all sorts of crap. I took my grandfather, a World War II vet, to the VA frequently for checkups, and nurses and doctors would complain about the newest machines coming in, even though machines had already been ordered 18 months or 2 years prior. And again, another example of waste and abuse. And so there are certain things, yes, that the AI and Elon and his engineers drinking Red Bull and eating Chick-fil-A will be able to find from the top down. But there are certain things that only the taxpayer with her own eyes can see on the ground. And now when you tell them, hey, there's a check with your name on it, and how big that check is depends on how much you chip in. If you see something, say something, then absolutely, I think that's a part of it. And there's a financial incentive. There's nothing like a financial incentive to get people motivated. Think about the fact that we are speaking right now. I'm honored, but I'll tell you, we're speaking in large part because the DOGE dividend is such a viral phenomenon. You're getting thousands of accounts on TikTok and Instagram posting about this every single day. The fact that we are even talking about a wonky economic proposal like a tax refund check called the DOGE dividend, I think speaks to the resonance of the country. They want to get behind something and they want to be a part of this government efficiency movement.
Is there a reporting system? Is there a 911 number that people can call and report waste, fraud, and abuse that they see?
Yes, there is. It's very simple. The DOGE account on X, you can direct message that from even a private or an anonymous account, and you can report that abuse. And so we're going to make it as simple as possible. You don't have to show up and speak to the inspector general and file a 39-page report. Send a quick direct message to the DOGE account. Elon has said that if you suspect waste, fraud, and abuse, that will get processed. And let's see what we can save in the near term.
How many of those have yielded something that the DOGE team didn't already know, didn't already see? Has it yielded some good result?
My understanding is yes. I haven't seen any messages personally, but I think when you take the DOGE dividend to the next level and you enact it into law and you say there's a check with your name on it, so long as you and your fellow Americans call out wasteful government spending, we are going to see a flood of requests in. Not all of them are going to be legit. Some of them are going to be spam. Some are going to be a misread of what the government program intends to do. But if even 1 in 20 lead to a credible lead, then we're on to something. We'll save even more than we otherwise would, and that would pay for the DOGE dividend itself.
Where do we stand right now on the DOGE dividend in terms of it getting approved, enacted? Where does it stand in the process, and what needs to happen for it to become a reality?
What needs to happen is a piece of legislation, full text of a bill being introduced into the U.S. Senate or the U.S. House. I've been meeting with members, me and my team, for the past week and a half, shoring up support, getting really good feedback that we've incorporated into a final bill. We now have that, and we're now narrowing it down to a few sponsors who can actually introduce this bill into the United States Congress so it can get added to the next large package like reconciliation and then ultimately be signed into law by the president, who has supported this literally since it was introduced.
Who is your likely sponsor?
I don't want to break too much news right here, right now, but it's someone who has a history of standing up for everyday hardworking Americans. And I think this person is the perfect advocate, the perfect champion for it. It's not going to be easy. There's a lot of House Republicans who, to your point, Dr. Phil, earlier, want to spend the entirety of the money paying down our debt to countries like China. I say, look, China and our debt holders can get 80% of it, but hardworking Americans, they need a break. They went through hell under the Biden economy. They took on a lot of debt to keep up with the Biden inflation. They need a refund. They need to reshore their finances.
There were a lot of stimulus checks that were paid out during COVID. There were lots of ways that people were supported. There were increases in unemployment. There were extensions in unemployment, rent moratoriums, mortgage moratoriums, a lot of things that were done to help people during COVID. But there were also stimulus checks sent out, some of them $5,400. I believe was the highest. And I can't quote the exact percentages here, but I know the first ones that went out, a substantial material portion of them went to paying bills, utilities, groceries. The second time it went out, it was substantially less. And I think the third one, even materially less, were used, which said that people didn't really need them at that time. It went into checking and savings. People weren't living off of them. They weren't buying groceries with them. I wondered if they were just putting them in checking and savings until COVID was over and they could buy a four-wheeler or a jet ski or something like that with government money. Are you afraid that people that get maybe a $5,000 check, a $6,000 check, might not manage it well?
I'm far more afraid that the government getting our tax money is not going to manage it well, as DOGE has documented.
I was just getting to that.
Again.
I was just getting to what they would do with the 20%.
Yeah, I'd rather give the 20% to the American people than give it to bureaucrats in Washington. But I think it's a totally fair question. I mean, we went through the worst inflation in 40 years under the Biden-Harris administration. And there's several reasons for that. A couple of them have to do with the big spending. So to your point about stimulus checks, there was total of $6 trillion spent by the government during the pandemic. $6 trillion. Only 12% of that was stimulus checks. So stimulus checks get a really bad rap. They certainly didn't help things in terms of the inflation picture, but 88% of the spending during COVID was not stimulus checks. The second point is you have to understand the context. The context back during COVID was we had a labor shortage. We had a supply chain disruption. We had lockdowns from sea to shining sea, rolling lockdowns in some states like California and New York for upwards of 2.5 years. And so those lockdowns, those dislocations, those labor shortages added on to the inflation from the fiscal spending. And then lastly, of course, you had the geopolitical tensions, Ukraine's invasion in early 2022, which kickstarted another round of oil and gas price inflation. And so very different situation now. There's no geopolitical tension that's pushing up oil prices. In fact, gas prices are at their lowest levels today in 4 years. We've got no labor shortage, no lockdowns, obviously, and we have an administration that is very much anti-regulation, pulling back fiscal spending and so on. And so the last point I would make on this is that it's not new to send folks a refund check. In fact, we do it every year. It's called the tax refund season. And just last year, we sent 100 million Americans a check of about $3,100 on average, and there was no spike in inflation. So I would say that, when you look at polling data on this, 70% of Americans say they would use a check like this to pay down debt. Paying down debt is not paying down a four-wheeler or going out and buying a new flat screen TV. It is shoring up your family's finances after 4 difficult years. And that's exactly what I trust Americans will do. And I trust them to be better stewards of that 20% than Washington.
Yeah, I'm being devil's advocate in asking the questions that I think people are asking. I appreciate it. I would trust them with it more than I would some government agency for sure. I focus on the heartland, not the bubbles on the two coasts. I think most Americans know the value of a dollar. I think they appreciate the value of a dollar. And I think if they get this kind of money back, I think they have a list of things they would do with it. And I would hope that they would carve a little bit of it out to celebrate with, to have some fun with, and not just pay debt down. I mean, come on, you got to give yourself a break sometimes. I do hope people would take maybe a vacation they wouldn't take otherwise, or they might do some things that they wouldn't ordinarily do and not just pay their electric bill with it and all. I would hope they would do some of that. So, I asked the devil's advocate question, but I think most Americans work hard, and I think they know the value of a dollar, and I think they would use it responsibly, and I think they have used it responsibly for the most part. You think this would actually stimulate the workforce some? Why?
I do. And the reason why is because to get the DOGE dividend check, if you're of the working age right now, is you have to be paying into the system, paying federal income tax, which means you got to be working. And so right now, there are 7 million working age men in America who are not working. When you combine the DOGE dividend check with no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, what you're effectively telling people is there is a check and increased pay right around the corner if you enter the workforce today. And that will, I believe, pull some people off the sidelines and say, hey, I can get a check, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, my all-in pay increases. That's something that I want to be a part of. And so I do believe that when you tell people that their pay will increase and that they expect a check with their name on it when the end of DOGE happens, that yes, you will incentivize a lot of people. Think of it as a signing bonus, but not right now, but to come later, that, hey, I could get upwards of a several $1,000 check if I start working today and start paying into this federal income tax system.
Yeah, this is very different from when people are sitting on the sidelines and the supply chain is shut down. This is a very different situation than we had after the lockdown. Hopefully, this really would be a stimulus, which I don't know that it necessarily was before, but I think this would have a very different impact. And I do think that it does incentivize people to pay attention to what the government is doing. I know a lot of people will have opinions that, don't really amount to anything because they're just frustrated in that moment. But if there are enough people to sort through that and actually find the gems in there where they can really find some waste, fraud, and abuse, they're incentivized to do that. That could really be a giant boost to DOGE in finding this stuff. I like people being deputized. I like them being involved because the name of my network is Merit TV, and I didn't choose that by accident. This is a meritocracy. The merit system in America, I think, is the heart of the system, and the president and I have talked about that a lot, and I think that's incredibly important. Where do you come down on that issue?
Absolutely. It's an issue where you unify the country. You should be hired on what you bring to the table, your merit, not the color of your skin, not your gender, not your sexual preference, et cetera, et cetera. Growing up, my mom, who's a legal immigrant from South America, she would tell me that she was always reluctant to apply for jobs with public affirmative action programs because, Dr. Phil, she wanted to be hired knowing that she was brought on not because she checked some arbitrary diversity box, but because she brought some real skill, talent, and merit to the table. And I think it's really this simple. Every American deserves dignity in their employment. The dignity of knowing that they were hired on skill and merit, and the dignity of knowing that they were not excluded because their race was not convenient or their gender was not considered privileged.
I've been in the healthcare delivery system for so much of my professional career, and I've been very close friends with minority doctors. And one of their biggest frustrations was, I have to carry with me my whole career people looking at me And because I'm black, they think, okay, he got a free pass. He got here because he's black. They'd say, I had to work twice as hard because I'm black to overcome people thinking I'm a diversity doctor. And that is such crap. I've had to fight that my whole career, and I hate that. I hate this, that I have to deal with that. I worked my butt off to get here. I took the same test, the same internship, the same residency program as everybody else, and still people like, yeah, I'd rather take the next guy. It really is a burden to so many of them that they really have had to carry that, and it's been a real frustration. I've had several of them tell me that.
That's right. And it's not fair. And you don't necessarily even blame the patient, you blame the system for saying, you walk into a hospital and the hospital is a big banner. We hire black doctors. We have a program that says that 40% of new doctors must be black. You don't blame the patient for drawing the wrong conclusion, because what did the hospital just say? We are going to hire black doctors no matter what. And the truth is that black doctors, Hispanic doctors, white are just as qualified as anyone else. They don't deserve to be stigmatized with that slur. And it's a slur, Dr. Phil, diversity hire. It is a slur, and it's not the patients who are murmuring behind the backs of the doctor who are responsible for the slur. It is a system that sets up DEI quotas and affirmative action programs that say that, oh, you're black, we need to lower the standards for you, effectively admitting that these people are of somehow a lesser quality, which is not true. That is the real act of racism here, is saying that Black Americans somehow need a cheat code, need to be ushered in the back door because they are not qualified. They are eminently qualified. And that's why the merit system and the work that you're doing and the work that President Trump is doing is so important.
I just couldn't agree with you more. What got you into this Incubate debate program? This is your nonprofit empowering young Americans with the art of debate, which is so intriguing to me because this is something I was really interested in from a very young age. I do it now every single day. I try to bring all sides together to talk about things. It's getting harder and harder to do that because people live in these bubbles and they just have confirmation bias. They don't want to hear anything other than affirming views and thoughts. And I love that you're really helping these young people learn the art of debate and therefore nurturing the willingness to debate. How'd you get into that?
I was a high school debater back 15 years ago. First thing I did my freshman year of high school, and I did it for all 4 years, and it completely changed my life. I had a really bad stutter growing up. I had a fear of speaking in front of crowds. I was plugged in talking to my grandfather and my dad about the news and current events and economics, but I didn't have an outlet. I didn't have a platform to debate those views. And boy, did high school debate give me that platform. So I was on the debate team, and then I came back as a volunteer judge in 2017, just after President Trump had won the first time around. And high school debate had changed for the worst. I wrote this article in the Free Press entitled, "At High School Debates, Debate is No Longer Allowed." Dr. Phil, there were judges telling 14-year-old girls that if you argued that Israel had a right to defend itself, or that if capitalism lifted people out of poverty, you would automatically lose. One judge said that if you brought up Donald Trump's name, you would lose. One judge went on further to say that if you referred to illegal immigrants as, illegal immigrants, they would cut you off, end the debate early, and give you the loss because, quote, they wouldn't have you making the debate space unsafe. So debate became a total propagandized echo chamber where conservative, moderate views were just not tolerated. They would automatically lose out of hand, no questions asked. And so I decided to build an alternative called Incubate Debate. And Incubate Debate is simple. Our job is to revive open debate in America. First, at our tournaments, which is what we're doing. Now what we're working on is bringing debate to classrooms all across America. Imagine learning about the events of August of 1945 in your history class, learning about the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and then having high school students debate that, whether it was truly necessary to drop those atomic bombs to end the war. Think about infusing the power of debate and civil discourse into classrooms all across the country. That's what we are building. We are incubating debate, and we're proud to be doing it.
What kind of participation are you getting? How many students do you have actively participating in your programs?
We're reaching 5,000 students right now. We'll
Seriously?
get that to 25,000 by the end of 2026. What we are doing now is working with teachers to give them a toolkit to be able to host engaging educational debates right in the classroom. You read The Prince by Machiavelli, and then instead of having the students write an essay as they did 2 weeks ago, Dr. Phil, you have them debate. Is it better to be feared or loved? They teach nuclear and solar in an environmental science class. Instead of writing an essay as they've done 10 times this semester, why don't we have them have a debate? Which is better? Which is more effective, nuclear or solar? Have students go up there, debate their ideas, speak their convictions, use research, and be humbled in the process of you don't know what you don't know sometimes. And that's what we're building with Incubate.
I think the fact that you already have 5,000 students participating in this is an amazing accomplishment. Congratulations on that. I can tell you it's astoundingly difficult now for me to get people to come, I'm talking about adults, to come on my platform and look at both sides of an issue here. And if I do, unfortunately, it's typically the extreme left that if I so much as ask a question,
yes,
all of a sudden I'm a hater and a phobic and all of that. You've got to be willing to discuss something to educate people. And I'm so proud that you've got 5,000 and are targeting 25,000 by the end of the next year, because the only way we're ever going to get out of these echo chambers is for people to learn that you can talk about these things, your head doesn't explode, you don't melt, and that you don't have to agree with what somebody thinks, feels, or believes in order to like and respect that person. They can disagree on an issue and still be a decent human being. I think we've so got to get people back to understand. There was a time when you could do that, but now they boo you down. It's terrible that we censor people in that way. When I was in college, people would come on with other ideas and you would flock to hear them so you could learn their point of view, even if it was just to arm you to disagree with them more effectively. But you listened so you could learn how to fight back. Now, you don't do that. You cancel them and keep them from ever talking, and you don't learn anything. That's so frustrating to me.
That's exactly right. And so much of the division in our country, as you've seen and covered before, really stems from misunderstanding. We don't want to talk to the other side, which means we don't know what the other side thinks, which allows this idea in our mind to fester that they are evil, that we expect and we anticipate the worst. We assume the worst out of them. And that's just not acceptable. I mean, there was a time in this country not too long ago, Dr. Phil, where you could disagree on nearly everything except that we could come together and hash out our disagreements. That if you voted different for me, it didn't make you any less of an American, that we respected the dignity of our differences. And that's what we're trying to get back to. Our mission, again, is revive open debate in America. We are better. I am better as a conservative when I can talk to my progressive brothers and sisters. My progressive brothers and sisters are better as progressives and as Americans when they can talk to us. And we needn't hate one another at all. We just need to be able to come together and hash this out. And sadly, what the pandemic showed us was there wasn't just a lockdown on our businesses and in our schools. There was a lockdown on public discourse and open debate. You were shamed if you pushed back on a mask mandate for 4-year-olds. You were shamed for asking why we were mandating vaccines for healthy 14-year-old boys. And so that culture of censorship, that culture that certain things really can't be debated, that is un-American and is antithetical to national unity and truth-seeking.
Yeah, I guess it was Feynman that said, I would rather have questions I can't answer than answers I can't question.
That's right.
let me tell you, that seems to be where we are. And as far back as high school, I was taken out of regular classes and put in some other classes where instead of doing a multiple choice test, I was given a blue book and said, okay, we want you to take the New Deal and discuss the domestic projects, the work projects, the financial reform and regulations, and compare and contrast that to Marxism and give 3 working examples of how they differ. You have to make that argument, and then you have to get up in front of the class and debate it. I was doing that instead of filling out a multiple choice test where all the answers were already on the test. You just had to find them. It just sparked in me to be challenged to have to put your thoughts into writing and then stand up and defend them. And I've been a fan of debate all ever since then. I just hate that we don't do that. And now I stand up and raise questions as to whether or not our elite universities should be supporting those that demonstrate on behalf of terrorist groups like Hamas and threaten Jewish students on campus. I never thought I would see and hear some of the things we're seeing and hearing on our campuses today.
Yeah.
And by just asking those questions and making that observation, my God, you would think that we were in another country. I'm absolutely shocked by it. Instead of people saying, I'd like to discuss that with you. Instead, I'd rather see you killed and nails hammered through your head. That just doesn't seem like America, not the one I grew up in. And so I love the fact that you're doing this and getting students to debate this stuff. And it will serve them well in life. It has you, right?
It's been a blessing for me, and we're going to continue doing this work. And, Dr. Phil, you are always invited to come out and judge one of our debates and see this up close. I'm sure our students would love to hear how you have facilitated this viewpoint diversity and just different perspectives on all the great work that you're doing. So open invite to you at Incubate Debate.
Oh, listen, I would love to do it. And in judging that debate, I'll bet you anything I would come out of there learning so much from these young minds preparing and debating and thinking on their feet and going back and forth. I guarantee you they would teach me so much in the course of that debate. You can't do that and not learn, right? I bet you learn every time you do it.
I do it. As a judge, as the organizer, as the founder, I learn every time. And our judges, we ask our students, we say that the true test of winning isn't winning in the traditional who won the tournament. It's, are you walking out of here knowing something that you didn't know when you walked in? That Hemingway quote, true nobility is not being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self. We ask our students, Dr. Phil, every tournament, if you walk out of here better than you walked in, stand up. And they all do. But what often happens is the judges stand up too, because they're walking out of here with new knowledge, new perspective, and a new idea of an important topic that we often debate at Incubate Debate.
Yeah, we have a place here in Dallas that's referred to as Old Parkland, and there's a wonderful debate chamber that looks like it's from days of old, but it's a wonderful debate chamber here. And maybe we can get you to hold an event time.
We'd love to have you. Yeah, we'd love to do it.
Well, listen, you've made great points about this DOGE dividend. I'm a great fan of DOGE. I think Elon is doing a wonderful job at it. I love the transparency of it. You've convinced me that the DOGE dividend makes sense, that it incentivizes people, and that it is not giving money away, but returning money to the people that it was taken from and squandered. The fact that there are 3 categories that you're giving attention to, with taxpayers, Social Security recipients, and the veterans group, it may have come to you in a dream and got fleshed out pretty quickly, but it seems to me that a lot of thought went into it and is well targeted and well thought out. I'm sure it'll be refined more by the time the legislation gets well written and articulated, but I'm convinced that it's the place to go, and I think people will benefit from it and feel like there's a measure of justice. And I do think it will increase their trust in government, that they did the right thing. And I hope it's a full measure of 5,000. I hope it's more than that, because I hope they stay the course. and do this. President Trump believes in it, and I think a lot more people believe in it than are willing to say so.
That's right. That's right.
And I certainly do. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this. And as this unfolds, I hope we can get together and talk about it some more.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. And I'm going to take you up on judging one of these debates. I would love if we can put it together to hold one right here in Dallas. I've got permission to invite people to use the chamber here at Old Parkland, and I'd love to host you guys here and put on an event.
Let's put it on Merit TV.
We can do that. We'll absolutely air it right here on Merit TV. We'll do it.
Thank you, Dr. Phil.
All right. Look forward to talking to you again. Thanks so much.
Likewise.
All
Thank
right,
you.
So long. Bye.